Welcome to the Finance Committee meeting of September 21st, 2023. As chair of the committee, I recognize that we have a quorum, and I call this meeting to order. The first item on the agenda is reorganization of the committee. As you know, as everybody knows, every year we reorganize. So we will start with the position of chair. With the permission of the committee members and their support, I would like to continue for one more year. Could I get a nomination?
I nominate.
Second.
Is there any other individual who would like to nominate themselves or nominate somebody else? If not, we will proceed to a vote. All in favor of more year for myself as chair of the committee, please say aye.
Aye.
All against, please say nay. The motion passes. Thank you for your support. We shall now proceed to the position of vice chair. I would like to nominate Dennis O'Connell once again for a position of vice chair.
A second.
Are there any other nominations? If not, we will proceed to a vote. All in favor of Dennis O'Connell as vice chair, please say aye.
Aye.
All against, please say nay. The motion so passes. For the position of clerk, I would like to nominate Mr. Jim Flynn. Could I get is there a second? Second. Are there any other nominations? If not, we shall proceed to the vote. All in favor of Jim as clerk for the coming year, please say aye.
Aye.
All against, please say nay. Congratulations, Jim. We shall now proceed to the next item on the agenda, which are the minutes of our meeting prior to our summer break. In fact, I forgot to welcome everybody back from the summer break. I hope everybody had a wonderful time. June 15th, 2023, the minutes. Has everybody had a chance to look at them? Are there any concerns or questions about it? If not, may I get a motion to accept the minutes of the last meeting?
Motion to approve.
A second? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All against, please say nay. The motion so passes. We shall now proceed to item number 4 on the agenda, which is the town manager's report. Mr. Mizikar, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So at the end of the fiscal year, we ran into a situation where we needed 2 additional reserve fund transfer requests. So this was for FY23 that closed on June 30th. As we were shaping up the end of the year, we needed 2 adjustments. We needed to add $8,113.93 to the town council line item for final bills and $964.75. The committee voted at your June meeting to allow up to $10,000 to be approved by the chair or the vice chair, and we are seeking the full board ratification of those reserve funds that the chairman did sign off on in the middle of July to balance the budget.
Question. Do we know what caused that? Was that due to the Beal School?
So the appeal for 1 through 7 Maple Avenue, we did start incurring expenses on that in May. It didn't cause the total overages, but it contributed.
Okay, was it a significant contribution to it?
I don't know the specific figures, but it would have been less than $3,000 for those first 2 months, but
Okay.
yeah, we are spending a couple $1,000s a month on that.
On that.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Mizikar?
You said a couple thousand a month. Now,
Yeah, now.
continuation?
Yeah, continuation. We have basically from June through the current month. There's a case near the middle of October is another milestone date for that litigation, and we'll know at that point if it's going to continue or some type of judgment would be had. So a couple more months of that.
And if it continues, we're talking another minimum couple $1,000s a month?
Yep.
And that's because we're paying for the council, for the town, for the board members from the planning board, et cetera, or are they paying their own?
No, so this is the defense of the planning board's decision.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, so.
Yep.
Can I ask one more question, Chair? How often do we have the planning board being contested or sued like this? Is this,
So probably once or twice a year.
okay,
But the difference with this case is the town has an interest in the property, so we're taking a more active role in the defense of the decision. Most times, the proponent or the developer bears nearly the full legal cost of it.
Right.
And we just file an appearance with our attorneys, so normally it's a couple $100, but yeah,
but in this case, they're
it's different, yeah,
just suing this town?
yeah.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? If not, may I get a motion to ratify the transfer, this particular transfer?
I'm so moved.
Second.
All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All against, please say nay. The motion passes unanimously. Mr. Mizikar, I think you have a
Yes.
second item, yes.
So what we'd like to do is provide a preliminary financial closeout overview from fiscal year '23. And Alex Martinez is going to lead us through some of that, and I'll pick up a little bit as well. So just wanted to provide you our initial look at how we did in FY '23. So Alex will hit
All
through.
right, thank you. So starting with,
It's frozen.
there we go. Starting with turnbacks, we turned back just over 1.2 million of the town and school operating budget. So we expended 99.12%, which is pretty close. I think last fiscal year was about 98%. So, you know, with inflation, we anticipated we'd be in this position. So that 1.2 million will go to free cash. All right. And then just quickly going over local receipts. So the FY '23 budget for local receipts was 11,965,000, and we received about 15.8 million. So we did really well overall in fiscal year '23. In your drive, you had a little bit more of a breakdown on the specific local receipt categories. And then this just shows a little bit of a further analysis. So pretty much every category except the trash and landfill either met closely or exceeded the budgeted amount. And actually for the trash and landfill, we did receive the makeup payment for what the difference was for that. So overall, you know, we were about 3.8 million over budget.
When you say makeup payment, was that something back from the waste man?
Yeah, from
Yes.
when, yeah. So we received it in this fiscal year, so it's booked in this fiscal year, but,
So I bring that up because I hear a lot of times people complaining that the town was not doing anything with waste management, they weren't holding them accountable. But it appears we did hold them accountable for,
no, not in this particular, so this is for the landfill operation
landfill?
itself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did we get anything back for when they missed pickups and all the other stuff?
Yeah, for yard waste and things like that, we didn't pay for
Okay.
those services that they didn't provide.
Okay.
So I had a couple of questions. Doesn't fiscal year close at the end of this month, or is it the middle of the
Our
month?
fiscal year closes June 30th,
Oh, June
July
30th.
1st to June 30th.
Okay. Okay. Then as far as the other receipts, I mean, we got some 2 million plus actual as opposed to budgeted.
Yep.
Was that mostly the investment income or something else?
Yes, that category includes investment income, the departmental revenues, so cemeteries, other departmental revenue, licenses and other permits, special assessments, and then the miscellaneous categories.
So as far as the investment income, that's income could you remind me, is that money we make off of free cash?
So it's multitude of sources. It's higher than normal this year because we're flush with cash more than we normally would for a couple reasons. The ARPA funding that we have in our accounts, is extraordinary. So that's like 11.5. We may have, 9 million or so of that left in there. We budgeted really conservatively with investment income because, of course, as we were setting the fiscal year 23 budget, it was in the winter of 2021, 2022. So, the stock market was not performing well, and we don't have a lot of these invested directly in stocks, but some of it is, and some of it also comes in CDs and bonds, and the yields were much better than we had anticipated. So, combination of a couple things. But yep, free cash would be a part of that.
I just had a question on that. What was the actual on the investment portion of it?
2.7 million.
2.7 million. We had only planned on 675,000 for the budget. Wasn't there a communication gap or something there? Because Bartholomew was in here in June talking to us, and
So
we got no indication at that time it was going to be such an increase.
No, I think he did point out that markets were up.
Not to that extent. He did not.
Well, we had been seeing the investment returns on a month-by-month basis much higher than we had anticipated. We certainly never thought we would be that far under budget. Again, I think the real reasons are those two underlying factors of more cash in our accounts. Dave, can you talk about what happened in July and like EMI?
With the consolidating the accounts?
Yeah.
So we did have the projects that we sort of closed out when we consolidated all those accounts under to our general account so that we would have a larger bucket of funds on the order of about 80 million in the one, I'm blanking on the name
Operating.
of that. Oh, the operating
Yeah,
fund, thank
yeah.
you. And then we are, I feel like we'll be much better at projecting these revenues going forward. We're working with the financial advisors on some very conservative estimates that would be greater than the 650,000 so that we can take advantage of this revenue as we continue to have a higher operating fund balance.
And just to add on to that, so through April, May, and June, we received 1.8 million in investment income. So a large portion of that did hit the books at the end of the fiscal year.
My point was, I think that was brought up in the meetings that we went from way behind to well above.
Yep.
Could I have one more thought? How is it communicated, I guess, is what I'm just concerned at such a wide gap that we should have known, a lot sooner that these funds were going to be available to us.
From Bartholomew?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't say that prior to, this springtime, we were deeply engaged with them on estimates, but we are now. So, as Dave said, we worked with them as we look at FY '24, the current year, and what we want to look for a budget for fiscal year '25 as we start next year's process. And we're going to work off of a base operating balance of about $60 million. And, they're going to look at the bonds and the CDs that we have and really provide us a closer estimate. This one, I mean, I don't know how else to say it, it was surprising.
Well, I think it's
because
great,
of the
but
balance. Yeah, no, it is.
I
it's a
just
good-
think
Yeah.
there was a communication gap there
Yep.
when I look at that wide spread
Yep.
on there that we should have known or got some idea from them if it was moving at that rate. So, thank you.
Just a comment.
Yes, Ryan.
I apologize for missing the meeting in June, but what I know of the markets, there has been some extreme changes in interest rates, which I think we're all aware of, and that, in part, is my guess, is one of the main reasons for that. But I would also caution in the projections that and estimates that you're looking at, use very reasonable numbers, because that could change in the
Sure.
not too distant
Yep.
future.
Yep. Thank you.
In fact, do we use investment income in our projections? Because that would be very risk that would be a high risk.
Well, so it is this line item within local receipts. We do have it there every year. And we will be very transparent with the committee as we set the finalize the FY '24 number and start for FY '25 of what we think the operating balance is going to be and what return we're anticipating. We have really good data, cyclically, back 20 years with these investments. And, we'll talk with you whenever we're setting the budget and let you know what, interest rate we're projecting and get your feedback at that time.
I have a question.
Jim?
Alex or Kevin, just along the same lines, just looking at we don't have to go through to each one, but there's a significant difference with departmental fees. I think you touched on it earlier. Can you maybe just peel back that a little bit?
Talk about departmental.
And maybe, was that, if you look back to 22, 23, was that a significant jump, or is it yo-yo every now and again?
So when,
Or I guess, in other words, does that number surprise you a little bit when you look at
well,
it?
all these numbers are surprising, to
Yeah.
be quite honest.
Okay.
$15.8 million in local receipts is, we could have never, we were almost 30% off on our budget estimate. So these revenues are really strong. Meals tax, motor vehicle excise tax, those things. Building permits, we're gonna talk about as we go into changes for the special town meeting and when we set the tax rate. Our new growth numbers and the development activity in town is incredibly strong. I mean, over the last 2 fiscal years, we've seen, over $260 million in new growth and new assessed real estate value in the community. It's $160 million certified new growth for the current tax rate setting cycle. That brings us $2.1 million in new revenue. There's just it's a good problem to have.
Yeah,
There's
it's
a
a
lot
great
going on in town. And I guess Alex can dive in a little bit on the departmental fees and things like that.
Just
But,
as a
I mean,
reminder,
even-
what's 1 or 2 examples that fall under that? Is that
Yeah.
like,
So, there's departmental revenue fees for the school, library, cemetery.
okay,
So for example, the Office of the Select Board issues alcohol licenses and those are annual renewals, so
okay,
that's included in that number. Miscellaneous recurring Medicaid is in there,
okay.
so yeah.
That helps, thank you.
But even if we look at, FY '22, the prior year local receipts, in total, 13.4 million.
Right.
FY '23, 15.8 million,
Yeah.
that's, we're conservative when we set the budget to start with, right? We don't ever want to be in a position where, we're like, well, we budgeted 14, we brought in 13, right? We can't afford that. But, I mean, that growth rate year over year is, it's pretty surprising. So, a lot of it's investment income, but
Right.
everything else is still really healthy at the same time when it comes to excise tax and things like that.
Do we know how our surrounding towns are doing with those types of revenues? I mean, I actually think the economy is doing better than most people realize. And there's a lot more growth. Just the fact housing prices are going up still when interest rates are up significantly. I think it was 0.5 point from when we had our meeting till now. Shows that there's still money out there. There's plenty of money flowing out there. So,
We can look at that, Dennis.
so I'm just wondering if this is more of an anomaly in the area than something we should be budgeting for in the next couple of years, because it is. I looked at numbers too. Huge growth between year over year the last 3 years,
Yep.
and there's not a lot of land left to build on.
No.
So
Rajesh?
Thank you. I have a couple, 2 quick questions. One is cannabis impact. Is that an annual recurring fee, or is it a one-time approval fee that we receive?
So the cannabis impact is currently a recurring fee that will be going away. So you may have seen in the newspapers that the Cannabis Control Commission is changing. They're becoming they changed their regulations and they're prohibiting communities basically from assessing fees like we have assessed. So our existing agreements with the 2 marijuana retailers that are in place are stable, and as the regulations get finalized, they seem to be protected. So we have about 2.5 more years left with each one of those. One of the changes that we will be proposing as we go into finalize the revenue scheme for FY24, the current year, is eliminating that as a revenue category that we're going to rely on. And we have the luxury, because we have such a gap, that we can just say, okay, we're going to project more in motor vehicle excise, but those impact fees are going away. That's a 3% assessment on retail sales just here in Shrewsbury.
Wonderful. The other question is related to investments. So the do we reinvest the amount that we received, or is it like are we using as a free cash?
So we, it depends. So we do anticipate some of it, right? So we budgeted for a certain amount and we use that. And then any that goes over the budget amount, it gets reinvested.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I guess one last question.
Sure.
With the huge investment gain that we have, we still, on our budget, came in right around the same amount that we budgeted for, correct? I mean, we turned back, what, $1.2 million?
Oh, so that was from the expenditure side. We didn't expend 1.2 of the money that we were
Yep.
allocated to spend. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So it's not like we spent all that money,
It would go into free cash.
free cash and
Yep.
rainy day fund or whatever you want to
Yep.
call it. And last question would be, how would that impact the override for schools and operating budget? We put money away on the side. We now have a few extra $1 million that we did not anticipate.
Yep.
Is that going to put us in much better position 2024 and
Yeah,
possibly extend the period we'll need before we have to do, before another override may come up?
Yeah, we haven't had a chance to really look if it goes beyond the 5th year yet, as we finalize everything for the special town meeting in the fall and set the tax rate this year. We'll be able to do that at that time, but generally speaking, with, these revenues at this level, it's a good thing, right?
Yep.
Seemingly, it helps extend the override and keeps the amount of money that we have in the override stabilization account higher.
So by being conservative, we can,
It's helpful.
Linda?
One quick comment, Kevin. So the turn back 1.2, does that go back to the stabilization fund or like a free cash?
It goes into free cash.
Okay.
Yeah, so that means that free cash is considered a reserve asset of the community, and we use it for, the capital improvement plan, and we have a policy on how we can use it. So it's a reserve asset, and we spend some of it and maintain the rest.
Thank you.
And just to refresh my memory, we don't pay any capital gain tax on.
We do not.
We do not. Right? Are there any other questions on local receipts? Good.
So this next slide just shows a pretty good visual of budget to actuals for some of our local receipt categories. And then before we go to the next slide, quickly touch on FY24 local receipts. So that is in the printout that you all have in front of you. And so these figures are through September 13th. So we've collected about 16% of what we budgeted for FY24. And just for a little comparison, through July and August of last year, we had collected 1.3 million. And through July and August this year, we've collected 1.9.
Are there any other questions for Alex?
So
Thank you.
keep going. So, obviously, the largest revenue category that funds our budget is real estate personal property tax. So we have a slide up there that shows performance in fiscal year '23 and the prior 4 years. So in fiscal year '23, we budgeted just shy of $103 million in total taxation for real estate, and we collected 99.11% of everything that we billed. So very strong payment rate by residents. And then personal property is a little bit different this year. I think some of this may be attributed to a timing matter with the end of the fiscal year, but regardless, we billed just shy of $1.7 million in personal property tax, and this is to businesses. And we've collected 93.2% of that, so 1.55 million. So it's a lower collection percentage. What I was citing on a timing standpoint, we had an auditor come in and do extra auditing of some businesses' personal property, and we are a little later in the year in getting those bills out. So you can see that we have an outstanding accounts receivable of $151,000. And we'll continue to collect that over the course of this fiscal year and beyond.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about the $800,000 in the real estate. That's something we're still looking to collect on, may or may not collect.
That is correct. Yep, right. We'll continue to collect on that, and then after 2 fiscal cycles, it's able to be put into tax title and
Yep.
move it into that process.
Okay.
What about previous year collections? Are they still ongoing as well? or-
They are ongoing. Yep.
And how do we account for that? Does that come into the current year
Yeah, it does. It does.
build?
It does.
And do we break down what was previous year collections in the current year, or is it just kind of lumped in?
We break it down.
Okay.
We can show what we collected, for each year. And it's satisfied, it's when, if you have a tax bill that's in arrears and you make a payment, it's on the oldest, it's on the aged,
Yep.
timeframe.
Kevin, for budgeting purposes, the 102 build compared to the prior year is an increase of about 6%. That includes the 260 million additional developments that you mentioned earlier.
It does not. It would include about half of that
Okay.
from what was in fiscal year '23. So yes, some of that is in there. The increase is also attributable, we did the final borrowing for the police station, so that's all excluded, so that's added in. And then the normal Proposition 2.5 increase and things like that.
Thank you.
So about 1.6 of that would have been the new growth part of it.
Rajesh?
So with the property tax, do you see that trend? There's a trend line where we will recover that. Like, let's say if it's 93, but we'll next 2 years we'll be getting 92, 99. Does
Yeah,
that
yeah.
happen all the time?
Yeah,
or
over
is it-
time, our standing midterm 2 or 3 year average is, 90, upper 98%, 99% collection.
So it should be recovered.
Yeah, it will be. Yep, pretty confident in that.
Thank you.
Kevin, one question in that tax income, is the Christmas tree shop included in that?
It would have been from fiscal year '23, yes. Yep,
Would have-
yep.
Anything else, Gene?
No, I thought we were over $1 million behind there before, that's why. So it's actually improved.
Yep. Our collections for the year are much better
Yep.
year over year.
So do these collections for like 22 and before that, is that what was the balance, is the current balance, or that was the balance for the end of the year?
Yeah. So that was a snapshot at the end of the year. So for the 1,112,000 for '22, we
That's from
would have
last year.
collected some of that
Right.
throughout the
Correct.
course of the fiscal
Yes.
year. Yep. So this is a year by year
Snapshot.
snapshot of just year end where we landed.
Do we have a number about all our outstanding
Yeah, we can.
collections?
Yep, and we can
cumulative?
provide that too. Sure.
That would be
Yep.
great, yeah.
Yep.
Milind, I think you had a question.
Kevin, one quick question, or just for my own education, what does the refund signify in each category, like the real estate and personal property?
So there's a number of reasons that individuals may qualify for an abatement or exemption. So the $102 million is the total amount that can be taxed, and then if you look at refunds in the real estate, it's normally like specific exemptions for being disabled or having an income need or something like that, being a veteran. And then within personal property, the refunds, some businesses challenge our assessments, and sometimes, we have to provide some refunds and things like that. So, or if a double payment was made, it could be
Right.
something as simple as that.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
Are there any other questions for the town manager? Thank you. Is there anything else you have to present, Kevin, or are we done? with
That's
the
it.
report?
Yeah, so that's the end of fiscal year '23. I mean, a really good, strong story again, and we'll be working on local receipts and keep you all updated on how we'll approach that for the settling down of the fiscal year '24 revenue model for town meeting, and then fiscal year '25.
Okay, thank you.
Good job.
Yeah. thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. It's really good. We shall now proceed. If there are no other questions or comments on the town manager's report, we shall proceed to item number 5, which is the review of the draft of the special town meeting warrant. So the warrant draft is currently has not been shared, but we will go over a list that was shared with us.
Yep, so
which
we're.
has 9 articles.
Yep.
So Kevin, if you may.
Where is that? Thank you so much. Yeah, so we're definitely working to finalize a draft, or the special town meeting warrant, which will be presented to the select board on Tuesday. I can give you a general overview of what we're thinking on these articles at this point, and I'll start off by saying that we do need to make some adjustments in the fiscal year '24 operating budget. There's a couple shortfalls that we're anticipating. One of them is associated with the ratification and settlement of the firefighters union contract. We, throughout that process, implemented an incentive based upon our negotiations to have firefighters get their EMT certifications as we look at the challenges that we're facing with ambulance staffing shortages and perhaps moving to our own ambulance services. So as we wrap that up, we felt it was prudent to move in that direction. So we do need some additional funds to cover that. We're going to propose that we add additional funds within the reserve fund, within the operating budget, which the finance committee controls. And then we also are making some changes within, what's the last category, Dave?
There's personnel.
Personnel board, yep.
Reserve, and then there's like some state aid changes where we had to move
Right,
funds around.
yeah, so we did, also, as we received the final state aid numbers from what we had in the spring, this isn't really transparent because the funds are automatically appropriated, but we need to make some changes on our master balance sheet to account for them. Net state aid for us was actually $140,000 lower than we had when we built the budget in the spring. The charges went up from the Senate numbers that we used for the budget when we went to town meeting, so we'll have to account for that in our financial model for the year. We are proposing to add funding into the general stabilization account to get it closer to its 5% policy level of the annual operating budget. And we are proposing some additional capital investments. We have the ability to make these adjustments within the general, within the operating budget, the general stabilization account, and the capital budget for 2 reasons. One is new growth. As I mentioned before, we had originally used $1 million in new tax revenue from new growth. We do have certified new growth through the assessor's office at $2.1 million. So again, that's $160 million in new structures, new real estate within the community over the last 12 months. So it's, a lot of growth going on in the community from that standpoint. Now,
Would also some of our local receipts help in that? Our increase in local receipts? or-
yes, and we do propose to use additional local receipts as well to fund the general stabilization account. Yeah. Oh, yeah, sorry, that is the last thing. So within the fire department as well, this committee is very familiar that over the past few years, we've had to come to you for reserve fund transfers because of firefighters being out on injury. We've actually had a firefighter that's been out since the end of May from an injury fighting a house fire. And his current prognosis has him out for most of the balance of this fiscal year. So we are going to propose additional funds into the fire department's budget to cover that cost and not have to rely upon the reserve fund. It's really a double benefit if we get that money into the base operating budget for the fire department. They should make reserve fund transfers less likely, not only this year, but in future years. We've never really accounted for a firefighter being out, kind of consistently, but as our base of firefighter grows, now 44, there's a higher likelihood that for part of the year or all of the year in any given year that we'll be dealing with firefighter injuries.
One quick follow-up on the EMTs. Are we gonna send them off to school, or are we gonna bring an instructor in?
We will bring an instructor
And this will be done on their own time or on
their own time.
their own time?
Correct, yes.
Have you had a good response on the number of applications that?
So we're not there yet. We actually just ratified the union just ratified the contract last Wednesday. So we haven't had a chance to do any implementation yet. Generally speaking, the union was supportive and interested in moving in this direction.
Thank you.
Milind?
Kevin, one quick question about the firefighter adjustment. Are we targeting certain percent, of the existing budget, like 1%, 2%?
Well,
or is it
the-
like a fixed amount?
Yeah, so the adjustment is specifically, it's like a little over $106,000. And we know that basically that provides the average firefighter's rate at a time and a half, because when we're backfilling these shifts, it's overtime for the full year. So yeah, it's basically time and a half rate for one full-time firefighter.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
So those are the primary budget adjustments. Within the capital budget, we are the largest capital investment that we're proposing to make is $400,000 to provide near-term investments in schools for climate control, air conditioning, mainly targeting roughly 100 classrooms on the top level of schools to provide air conditioning in those classrooms where there currently is not any. We're going to try to be budget conscious when we make these investments. The right approach would be to, put permanent HVAC systems in there, but that's on the order of magnitude of, tens of millions of dollars. So these would be, wall-based units or window-based units. And as everyone knows, in the first week of school this year, Dr. Sawyer had to call a half a day, one of the day, because of the temperature in the classrooms. In some classrooms it was over 80 degrees. So we're just trying to provide some type of temporary relief to keep school in session, in the first few weeks and the last few weeks of school as it is becoming more and more of a challenge. So we'd look to make that investment.
Do you have any numbers, any ballpark numbers on?
Yeah, so we're using 100 classrooms at $4,000 a classroom is how we're budgeting now. That would enable us to make electrical changes and, buy units and make modifications depending on a variety of approaches depending on what school. So there's some upper floors in Coolidge that needs to be addressed, some upper floors in Floral, and some aspects of the high school that we'd make some investments in.
But that would just be capital expenses. What about operational expenses? Those would go up as well?
So it's a good question that we would have to address, and there wouldn't be really an impact until the next fiscal cycle, fiscal year 25. Yeah.
Rajesh had a question.
So do we qualify for the green benefits or rebates, or is like heat pumps if we would split units,
They're new.
top floor?
I don't think so. I don't think with this type of investment, we would get anything in that. If I, yeah, I don't.
My understanding of that is it's got to replace something that's less efficient, but
Right.
I'm not.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
I don't think these investments are qualified.
Dennis?
So these are like window units that'll be going in,
Yeah,
larger,
yeah, something like that. You know, whatever commercial grade window unit or wall unit that we can invest in.
and then have you looked at the cost if you did some of them with heat pumps or whatever, just, you know,
That will be explored where there's an opportunity to do that.
because I think there would be in some cases an opportunity to do that.
Yep, yes. It just depends on which building and,
Yep.
Any other questions?
all right, so, Article 4 is a kind of a financial housekeeping article where we are going to request to rescind the borrowing authorization that remains for the Beal Elementary School, and this is on a little over $40 million. This basically, is looked favorably upon because we're cleaning up our books and no longer have the ability to borrow this $40 million once it's rescinded. So bond rating agencies like to see us do this, just good financial housekeeping. So we'd look to rescind that. I do also want to mention in the final MSBA audit that was performed in August for this project, the MSBA has identified another $1.3 million that's available to us in the grant that they have sent to us. So we'll have another $1.3 million for some future appropriation from that project. So there's a really strong endpoint with the project, and then in the final audit, we get another $1.3 million back. So
So, but Kevin, wasn't it that we could have used this amount to borrow for some other capital project? And given that it was a good interest rate, we could have used it for something else?
no, so that's the money that we borrow that we've actually
I see.
that we've actually borrowed but didn't expend. This borrowing specifically could only be used for this project, because you have to go, in order to change the project, you wouldn't do this, but you would technically have to go back to the ballot, you know, through the full ballot process and tell those voting on the ballot that what you were gonna use it for. So you can't borrow any more money, even though it's authorized.
And just
Dennis?
to clear up, since the money hasn't been borrowed, we don't have an interest, it would be today's interest rates that we'd be borrowing.
That's correct. Yep.
So there is no real reason to keep it.
Yep,
Open.
100%. Thank you. Article 5 is a proposal that's supported by Selco to require all future utility investments like wires of any sort to be put underground. There's really two reasons behind this. One, general aesthetics within the community, and two, resiliency to weather events. As you know, for decades in this community, most subdivisions have been undergrounded just for those two reasons alone. This would require any major reinvestments or the installation of new infrastructure when it doesn't exist to be put underground in the future by bylaw. So,
So this is for future installation.
future installations, yep. Article number 6 on this list would be to make some adjustments. There's two times within an individual taxpayer would qualify for a tax deferment, meaning they don't have to pay their taxes. One is because they're all related to financial, but one is a medical financial need, and the other is an age and financial need. So when someone defers their taxes, the general interest rate that's applied is 8% to those taxes in deferment. We would charge 8%. There's an ability to reduce that to 4%, and we would look to make that change from 8% to 4%. The real reason for this is the vast majority of these cases are elderly individuals who just can't afford to pay their taxes, and if we're charging 8% interest, we're basically eating into their asset value. So it's not really fair. So we're looking to reduce it. There's only one property that's currently in deferment within the community, and there's less than $10,000 deferred at this point. So there's really no financial impact to the community by doing this. It's more of an equity issue.
G.
Basically, all that is just a carryover at the time of sale, you get it all back. There's no
Absolutely.
loss at all.
Correct.
on there, so,
Yep.
yeah.
And the reason someone would go into deferment versus just not paying their taxes is because delinquent taxes are assessed at 14%. And then once it's moved into tax title, it goes to 16%.
Just a quick question. So the 4%, that, that would keep up with inflation then, so
Pretty much. Yeah.
as they're in that, we're not losing as a town tax revenue. We're giving them a little bit of a hand there to either sell,
Yep.
you know, whatever.
So the next item is seeking CPA, the use of CPA funds to acquire and restore historic fire apparatus. We'll provide a full detailed presentation, but in summary, we've been notified by a resident, former Shrewsbury resident that now lives in Texas, that he has ownership of the town's third motorized fire apparatus. It's a 1926 LaFrance fire apparatus. It was built specifically for the town of Shrewsbury in 1926, and he's willing to gift it to the town. We just have to get it from Texas to here and then restore it. We're requesting $70,000 in Community Preservation Act funds, which they haven't yet granted, but we had a preliminary meeting and they agreed that it was an eligible project. So we would use $9,500 to transport the truck and the equipment that this gentleman has, including a spare engine and things like that, and then $60,000 to make restoration and get it in working order. It's in rather good shape. It does run, but it does need a lot of work. Our plan for that would be to restore it over the course of the next 4 years and have it ready for the 300th anniversary celebration. It is documented that this fire truck was in the town's 200th celebration in 1927. It was only a year old at the time. So it's a pretty neat piece, and I look forward to Firefighter Milos and Deputy Colby coming in during the budget hearings and sharing a little bit more with you.
So will it be kept, preserved inside the fire station itself
Yes,
for
yes.
public viewing later?
Yes, yep.
Rajesh?
So CPC will fund that as part of that?
That's what we're requesting.
So we don't have any expense on the town side or finance?
That's correct. It would come from that source of funding. Yep.
G.
Two quick questions. Did you get the restoration price from somebody local, or where did that come from, number one?
Yep.
And could you share that with us?
Yeah, so through a variety of sources, so firefighter Milos, who does all repairs on our current apparatus, has worked with a number of individuals and groups within the region that restore historic fire apparatus. So that's where the number came from. It also came from a very detailed assessment that the current owner has been able to provide for him, the work that he's been able to do on it and what he thinks it needs.
As far as storage goes, where would it be stored?
So permanently, it would be stored in the lower section of Station 2 on Harrington Avenue. So it's a climate-controlled facility that's no longer big enough to house a modern fire truck or an ambulance. It's, around the back side of Station 2 down there on Harrington Avenue.
I think the price is low for restoration.
It could be. So the goal of the restoration is to bring it, quote, to parade quality, which is not museum quality. So it would be working and everything, but it, wouldn't necessarily be 100% perfect you know, from what it was when it was originally built.
Jim?
That was my question, actually. It's gonna
Okay.
be functional, you'll be able to drive it. is the
Yeah, it
goal?
would be able to be used in
parades.
parades, and the person that's donating the vehicle to us requested that it gets transported to a major historic fire apparatus event in Rhode Island every year. Whether we can agree to that or not,
Right,
you know, we'll see, but, because it would have to be put on a truck to
right.
get down.
Yeah, it's not gonna, right, great, thank you.
Yep.
Milind?
One quick question. I mean, this is great, but, you know, it has a historic meaning.
Yeah, yeah.
So do we have like some estimate to kind of maintain it, you know, year over year, you know, from this gentleman?
Yeah, I mean, we think that the vast majority of the cost would come during the restoration process, and that's the $60,000 effort. What the conversation with the CPA, and I think is really likely, what would happen if we needed additional funding, especially during the 300th, which we'll be seeking general community donations. We think this is a good showpiece that once it's here and in town, we could raise money to fund the balance of the restoration and perhaps ongoing maintenance of it.
Do we know what its assessed value is and if we have to get some insurance for it?
I don't know what its assessed value is right now, but we can look into it. It would have to be insured, but I don't think it's going to be a substantial impact at all on our insurance.
Last question.
Sure, Jim?
Do we have anything similar today, Kevin?
We
Like
don't
in
have
fire?
any historic motorized fire apparatus. We do have 2 pre-motorized hand tubs in the headquarters that were pulled by humans,
Nice,
you know, to the fire. So,
Okay.
yeah, they are up in headquarters that can be seen. The first 2 trucks, this was the third, we don't believe they exist anymore. We
Yeah.
believe they've been scrapped. So, there's no record and no one has any knowledge of where they may be.
okay. Thank you.
I think just one general comment, this is probably a future attraction for Spirit of Shrewsbury,
Yeah, absolutely. Things like that. Yep.
for kids.
Next item is we look to make some adjustments to the dog control bylaw. This is to realign our current fee schedule with the state general laws, which we're required to be in line with, and it also generalizes the hearing authority that's responsible for dog hearings. Under the general laws, the select board has the ability to delegate their authority, and they recently have done that to the chief of police. And so therefore, we just want to make a generalized change with regards to that in our own local bylaws. And then the last item that's proposed here this evening is the consideration of a tax increment financing agreement with Physic Instrumente. They're a precision manufacturer that's looking to relocate 75 and create 100 additional new jobs by fitting out approximately 125,000 square feet at 384 South Street, which is part of Centec North. We're in the process of negotiating a tax increment financing agreement with the select board and the company. And I don't have any details on that. We've been in conversations with the company for a little over 3 weeks at this point, and we're making good progress. There's a couple reasons why we still want to bring this, or we think it's important to bring it to this town meeting. This tax increment financing agreement does need approved by town meeting, so any tax adjustments need to be approved by the legislative body. And of course, it lines up, although we're a little stretched for time for the October 16th town meeting, but we don't plan to have another one again until the spring. Once it's approved locally, tax increment financing agreements go for approval by the state. And the state only meets quarterly, and their next meeting has a November application deadline, and they meet in December. So if we weren't to do this fall, then it would likely wouldn't be until sometime in June unless we called another special town meeting just for this purpose. So Generally speaking, this is a company that falls right within our target area of someone that we'd want to consider a tax increment financing agreement with. They have an average employee salary of over $120,000. They employ a broad variety of technical skills, from shop technicians to PhD engineers. This would be their United States headquarters. They are a German company, and the overall company is looking to expand its manufacturing capability in the United States. In talking with the company, they're working to secure, through their lease agreement with the property owners, the right of first refusal to both expand into the balance of the building, which again is a 196,000 square foot building, and or to purchase the building if the current owner ever sells it. So they want the right of first refusal. So it being a U.S. headquarters, they'd be attracting, international and domestic guests in to see their processes and provide training to their employees and things like that. So we think this is a really good opportunity. These 175 jobs would make them one of the top 15 employers within Shrewsbury, and would add about 25% more manufacturing jobs to the community. So it's a really interesting opportunity for us to consider and explore, and we're working through that negotiation with them right now. So happy to talk about tax increment financing agreements and how they don't harm us if it, as we move forward.
Dennis?
Yeah, I actually didn't attend the meeting, but I was able to watch it. That sounded like an interesting company. A couple questions I would have is, why are they leaving Auburn? Are they out of space? Because I'm assuming Auburn has a higher tax rate than we do to begin with.
Yep, so Auburn does have a higher tax rate. It's about 30% higher than Shrewsbury's. They are just out of space there. So they also have a manufacturing facility in Hopkinton where they're out of space, and they would merge the Auburn and Hopkinton facilities here in Shrewsbury, along with what's been just described as a machine shop in Nashua, New Hampshire. Yep.
And except for the National New Hampshire, well, actually property taxes there are much higher, but we are already a much better tax base for them. It's going to be they're going to lower their taxes just by moving here. So
Correct.
I'm wondering, have they said how much they're looking for a TIF and how long?
Yeah, I'd rather not really talk about the details of that at this point.
But we will get into those before.
Yeah, we will, absolutely.
Okay.
Town meeting has to approve the specifics of the tax increment financing agreement. We're just in the process of negotiating it. So I do know that they're looking for a base lease of 10 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rajesh?
So now we have a couple of questions, right? When they are anticipated to start, like open the offices up here. Second thing is, by giving them the tax financing, what we will be getting in?
Sure.
Is it something tying them to sit here or just?
Yeah, so a couple of things along that. So the increment and tax increment financing is that any benefit or reduction in taxes that we're going to provide to them will only be on their direct investment in the real estate and personal property. So there's already a building that sits at 384 South Street, and it's producing real estate taxes to us. Those will never change. They'll never go down. The company is proposing an $11 million investment in total investment in personal property and fit out for that space. So any agreement that we strike with them would only be on the actual assessed value of real and personal property within that building. And it's not only going to be $11 million, it's not even going to be $11 million, because $11 million is their total investment. So that includes all their soft cost, all their design, all their acquisition soft cost, legal fees, things like that. So, the increment value, again, if we strike an agreement with them, it would only be exactly what they're making an investment in. Now, that property is generating roughly, off the top of my head, about $160,000 in tax revenue already. So it will only go up from there. So it will never reduce that.
Gene?
I have a question on the manufacturing aspect of it. I think, number one, somebody should go and look at their present manufacturing facility in Hopkinton, Auburn, whatever they're doing. I don't know what they're manufacturing right there right now, as far as the product line itself goes. But some of these manufacturing areas, whether they're cutting wet or dry, they produce a lot of hazardous materials. And I think you need to know and see what they're doing and how they're handling this stuff, because it could be a burden
So, yep, so
on
this is,
the amount of water
yep,
and
so
power that they need.
we've addressed that, or we've investigated that already. So they are not a high power or a high water consumer. They're a precision manufacturer who develops equipment for the high-tech industry. So they develop devices and equipment that companies like Apple, who is one of their customers, and Samsung uses to set microchips within devices. So very precise equipment. They also have their devices within like the Webb telescope that's in space, the Hubble telescope that went out, decades ago. So it's a very clean, sterile manufacturing environment that they operate in.
Do you know what type of equipment they're using? Are
What-
they into machining centers? Are they into Bridgeports? Are they into mills, grinders, boring machines?
I don't know what those things are, to be honest with
Yeah.
you, but
That's why I say I think it's very important that somebody takes the time to go and look at their
Sure.
present
Yep.
manufacturing facilities, and you get a view of it on there.
that's fair, and they've invited us in
Yeah.
to do that, and we will take that opportunity to do that. But, as far as water demand and electricity demand, they're not high consumers.
And did they say it's more of a white room atmosphere, or?
Yes. Yep.
It is.
Yep,
So it'd be a white room in a temperature-controlled area where they're doing this
correct.
manufacturing.
Yep,
But those are, I think, input, why
Yep.
you should see it.
absolutely.
I do remember that they did mention that they have some processes for the residue that they do have
Mhm.
to dispose of that. So that's something, will they be visiting us on the time of, when we have our
Absolutely. Yep.
Warren
Yep.
meeting? Yeah. Maybe those
And
are
if we,
questions could ask
if
them.
anyone's interested and we can arrange a site walkthrough, happy to have anyone that can.
I'd be
go.
interested in that.
Yeah, I'd do that too.
But yeah, then from what I understand and even checking out what they do, it's very high precision. It's a lot of work that goes into chip making facilities, et cetera. Probably not working with a lot of hazardous chemicals in what they're doing, whereas the chemicals would be more in the chip makers side of it. But they're building and they even talked about nanotechnology, just getting very small precision pieces to do the cutting, do whatever else needs to be done for setting the chips. Seems like again, I think it's a great opportunity. I just want to make sure we're also selling them on the fact that it's a great opportunity to come to Shrewsbury for taxes alone.
That was the first thing that went out of my mouth.
Yeah.
Selco and tax rate, to
Right.
be honest with you.
So,
Yep.
so hopefully, again, we have to negotiate, you have to negotiate the TIF, but hopefully that will play in our favor.
Yep.
And again, they're looking for a 10-year, so they'll be here, or they have to repay what was missing, I
That's
believe.
correct, yeah, and to answer that directly, so they have an obligation throughout the duration of the term of the TIF and 3 years beyond to meet or exceed their employment guarantee or proposals. So they're proposing 100 additional jobs here in Shrewsbury. The state has really improved their regulations after COVID. What's a permanent full-time employee? How many days do they have to be on site? All those things. It extends for 3 years beyond the agreement. If they don't, then we have the ability to claw all the dollars back. You may have seen in the paper recently that,
Worcester.
yeah, Worcester is actually beginning the decertification process of their TIF agreement with Unum. Now, that agreement was very lucrative for Unum. I don't know the details on why Worcester, I'm sure it worked for them, but they were receiving about a 95% tax break each and every year on their investment, so.
And I had one more point. In the presentation, for those that didn't see it or weren't there. They've also talked about working with the schools, bringing people in, they're looking to probably train high school kids, graduates that may go to college or may not go to college for those type of skill sets. So it looks like it'd be something great for Shrewsbury schools, since we've lost the tech school, just another way to possibly get some more exposure for some of those kids that want to go that route.
Yeah, we're in the process of setting up a meeting with them and Superintendent Sawyer and his team to begin that discussion.
Yeah, so.
One quick.
Rajesh?
So can we is there a possibility that we can ask them what titles will be sitting in? Because if it's headquarters, are we anticipate the leadership team will be sitting in this site?
Yep.
And then can we tie those titles to the tax incentives that we're providing? So they need to maintain those titles here.
I don't know that. It's something we can look into, though. Yeah, okay.
The CEO is going to be sitting there, right?
Yeah, like sometimes they say, okay, your CFO has to be here.
Uh-huh.
The title has to be here, right?
Yep,
So
yep.
that way we also get the
Sure, yep.
all those tags.
Yeah, I mean, it's my understanding that is their intention, so I don't,
Yeah.
this would be their only US facility once they merge operations here.
Right.
If they merge operations here.
And then, this is one thing, if they do bring manufacturing, that pretty much means the jobs have to stay in that facility, unless they outsource the job, to robotics, but then at that point, they'll be
They'd
breaking the
obviously
tip.
move back, yeah.
Yeah.
Milind?
Just comment and a question. So just to add to your comment, Rajesh, is in their presentation, they did kind of mention which titles preliminarily they, envision to be sitting in this facility. So we can definitely talk about it. Question is more procedural. I know the timing is really tight. So for any reason, the timing doesn't work, what do we stand to lose as a town, or what they stand to lose as a applicant?
Yep, so, yeah, I mean, time, certainly, right? I mean, if we're not able to successfully negotiate something, period, they could look to another town. I know they're doing their due diligence in the region. They do want to be in central Massachusetts, but, there are other opportunities, other towns that, they're doing their due diligence with as well. So we could flat lose the company as an opportunity, or we could lose, 3 months, 6 months, for them to do their fit out if they end up staying with us, and we can negotiate an agreement and call a special town meeting and have a meeting at some point in the future. So I think those are, the ultimate risk of losing them in its entirety and then just having this project delayed.
Is there a risk of the state not approving it?
Normally not. So they have a very sophisticated consultant that supports businesses through this process that we primarily interface with, and they do this all the time. So, the process and the agreements are, I won't call them standard, but closer to standard forms. It's a rather prescriptive program at the state level of what incentives they're allowed to receive based on the type of business operations that they have. I don't think it's zero, but I think that the level of sophistication of them and their support consultant, that doesn't seem to be a big risk.
But do we need our own consultant to take control of that from our side, or is that totally on theirs?
No, that would be totally on them as far as getting through the state process, yeah.
And one last question.
Go ahead.
So if it did fall through, or if town meeting voted against it, that building, I'm assuming, is vacant right now?
It is.
And what happens to the value of those vacant buildings as they go vacant from 1 year to 2 years to 3 years? I'm assuming the tax value of those go down.
They do
because-
start to go down,
Right.
that's correct.
So
yeah.
there is a,
And I think, I'm sorry, I didn't.
so, well, the impact to us, if this doesn't go through, is we could actually end up losing tax revenue. Whereas if it goes through, we at least maintain tax revenue.
I think another important consideration for this use on this site is that most facilities that are being constructed like this are being used for shipping and logistics
Yeah.
facilities. There is, in comparison, really no comparison to this type of precision manufacturing use and a logistics warehouse. There's
Yeah.
very little value in the fit out, there's very little value in the personal property, and as we all know, there's 10, maybe 100 times the traffic impacts, so this is a really great opportunity for us at this location. 175 full-time jobs, they work one shift a day, so it's not a 24/7 operation. And the traffic counts would be considerably less than if it was a shipping facility.
Actually, I lied, I had one more question. The, we used to have that type of manufacturing here, by the way. Digital had, and then Mac Store had a very large facility, which I believe did manufacturing as well, making disk drives, et cetera. So it wouldn't be something brand new for Shrewsbury to have. So I'm not, again, I think we do our due diligence, what they're putting there, but I'm gonna, most likely what they're doing now is less impact to the environment than what was going on in the 80s and 90s at those facilities.
So are we designating that area as a sort of a technology park to attract even more people after them, or is it just open to all sorts of businesses?
I mean, I think it provides us with an opportunity to think in that direction where we haven't had the ability. They're right next to Charles River, which, is, not a manufacturing facility, but it's, a biofarm facility. And I mean, it's a really good opportunity to be able to think in that direction and try to recruit additional businesses in as well. From my research, manufacturing, depending on the specific type of manufacturing, and the macroeconomic scale, every manufacturing job leads to 6 to 10 additional jobs. So their suppliers and their, other entities that support their business, could provide future benefits to the community as well.
Jim?
Kevin, is this the first TIF to cross your desk since you?
Yes.
Yes.
The town has only ever executed one TIF, and that was with Charles River.
Okay.
And they ended up backing out of it.
Okay. And then a quick
So that was a
follow-up.
20-year tax agreement
Please,
with
Jim.
them.
Do you know if they've, before coming to us, do you know if they've had a TIF elsewhere, some other agreements, whether it's in Auburn or before Auburn?
So
we
my
know that?
understanding, they didn't have one in Auburn.
Okay.
They did recently last year at this time, negotiate a TIF with the city of Marlboro, but they ended up backing out of that because of the space didn't meet their criteria. It was only 60,000 square foot and wasn't this high quality of space, so they were pursuing that space, but then ultimately didn't close on that deal.
Thank you.
Milind?
So just to extending on Jim's thought, so if they back out, do we get like a breakage fee or something, or can we negotiate that way?
So if they don't meet the terms of the TIF, then we can claw back all the funds. If we enter into a TIF and they never perform, I don't think there's any opportunity for us to. The value was never there. The real estate was never there. So, yeah, I don't think we have anything at that point.
Any other questions?
Okay.
And that ends the review of the draft, the items that are going, the articles that are going to be on the special town meeting warrant. So we can now proceed to item number 6 on the agenda, which is a review of the meeting schedule. On October 5th, 2023, we are scheduled to meet for the public hearing on the special town meeting warrant articles. And the draft will be sent to us prior to that meeting, correct, Alex?
The signed warrant
Will be sent to,
yes,
okay.
it'll be signed on Tuesday, and you'll get the draft motions.
Nice. Okay, excellent. Any questions on the October 5th meeting? It's a public hearing.
Just one
Milind?
quick question. So would we have another meeting to deliberate between the public meeting and
Nope.
then the
We
Town
deliberate
meeting.
at the end of after
at
the
the end of
public
the
hearing.
same meeting?
The same meeting.
Okay. Yes.
We'll do
Thank
that. Anything else? No. So October 16th is the special town meeting. You'll have to figure out getting there beforehand to collect as a committee. And if there's any other things that we have to vote on, we'll figure that out on October 5th itself. November 16th then will be our next Finance Committee hearing, meeting. Any questions or comments on item number 6, A, B, or C? If not, we shall proceed to other business. Does anybody have any business or anything they would like to share with the committee? Not, thank you. We'll go to the correspondence that we received. So we received an email to the Finance Committee from Hannah Kane, State Rep, regarding new legislative aid, Kerry Shea, dated July 20th, 2023. An email to the Finance Committee from Hannah Kane again, State Rep, regarding Chapter 90 funding, dated July 29th, 2023. There was an email to the Finance Committee also from Hannah, our State Rep, regarding the fiscal year 24 state budget update, dated August 7th, 2023. There was a memorandum to the Finance Committee from the Town Manager, Kevin Mizikar, regarding the October 16th, 2023 special town meeting. The action dates dated August 18th, 2023. And there was also another email to the Finance Committee from the Town Manager, once again, Kevin J. Mizikar, regarding important topic at the Select Board meeting, September 12th, 2023, dated September 7th, 2023. Are there any comments or questions about the correspondence we received? If not, we shall go to item number 9, which is adjournment for our meeting today. May I get a motion to adjourn? A second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All against, say nay. Motion passes. Thank you, everybody.